So I was on your Instagram and I saw this drone video and it looked like you were like jumping in canals, not like in the middle of Amsterdam, thank God, but you were jumping in the water for a cold plunge with some friends. And you got drone footage, which was really cool. But tell me a little bit about that because one, I'm like a baby. And two, I want to know like I think people want to know too, like the benefits of
Mm.
cold plunge or getting like, I guess, cold therapy. Looks
Yeah,
really cool.
honestly, I was so nervous. It was quite an experience to. I just want to plug my speaker in here before it stops working. But I was so nervous. I was actually quite terrified. I woke up on the day, and my friend Volkmar, who's Dutch, he's like a personal trainer here in Netherlands. He invited me over because he knew that I was very interested in like all things movement and mindfulness and meat based, and he's the same. He's a big fan of animal based nutrition, and I've been doing cold showers consistently now for the past couple of months, and I have to say that it has been one of the best things that's ever happened besides like having a meat-based diet in my toolkit. It's so like profoundly impactful in the way it impacts your biology, and it makes you just feel so rejuvenated, and it's not fun. Like every time you do it, it's not a fun experience, but once you've done it, it feels so good to have done it. So anyway, I did my inaugural Northern Europe cold plunge in the freezing water here in Amsterdam with my friend Volkmar. That's the drone footage you saw. And I woke up in the day and it was quite miserable. And I just said to myself, I was like, fuck, I'm just not excited for this at all. And
Yeah.
and I was so close to canceling, but I just said to myself, Josh, you speak a big game. You talk about all these things. You do CrossFit. Come on, man. You've just got to go for the cold plunge. You just got to do it. And what we did is we did this like team warm up sesh before we went in. So we huddled in Volkmar's house. The lake is like
Mhm.
maybe 50 meters away, staring at it,
Oh, okay.
and we do this like warm up routine where we breathe through our nose and you breathe through your mouth, and you do squats, and you just get your body warm under the guise of having no air in your lungs. So what happens is you breathe in and you hold your breath and you do some squats, and then you sort of feel like you can't like breathe anymore. Then you come up, and what that does, like the nasal breathing itself, is part of the process because when you go in that water, it's so cold. Well, for somebody who's like a beginner like myself, when you go in that water, it's so freezing that you can't breathe properly. And I read this quote by Wim Hof is that, the cold is merciless but righteous. It teaches you how to breathe. So that's exactly what it does. When you go in there, you are forced to breathe properly, which is breathing through your nose, breathing intensely, listening to your body, allowing your body to do what it naturally is capable of doing. But there's no other stress quite like cold stress. I mean, I know we're going to speak about saunas maybe and things like that, but the cold has this like immediate effect on your biology that is almost instantaneous. I'm sure you've been in a sauna. Sauna takes a while. You sit there, you start heating up, but cold is like it's instant. It's like
So I've
your
only done cryotherapy.
yes,
Like,
yes, you
so
have
the
that.
cryotherapy that gets like 100, like negative 100 degrees,
Mm,
like that. And you can only do it for like a very short amount of time because it's so below zero, but
yeah,
I've
yeah.
only done like polar like polar bear swims
Polar
when
bears.
I was younger, and we'd go swimming and or like camping, and then like you'd like go in the lake or something when it was like winter, and it was called like polar plunge, type thing, or like a polar bear
Mm.
swim. And then like you would get like an award for doing it. So this is like Girl Scouts. It's like the equivalent of Boy Scouts, but like Girl Scouts. So like you would go
Yeah.
camping with your dads.
Mm.
And it was actually really cool. But like that was one of the things. But I wanted to ask you, so first of all, for people who maybe don't know who Wim Hof is, he is the guy who does the signature breathing for doing immersion in the cold, right? So he's the one who kind of teaches you how to breathe properly when you are submerged into very, very cold. Like you said, it makes it difficult to breathe, but that's Wim Hof. The other thing I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, for people who like are like, I don't know, like Josh says, like it had more of an effect on him than like meat based, like what are, if you could like tell us some benefits where like people could expect to see like what this would do for them. I know one of course is like putting down inflammation, like the cold
Hmm.
can help with inflammation in your body, but what else can it do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's obviously there's seriously a number of like scientifically backed benefits. And in fact, if people want to find out the science behind it, one of the best people is Andrew Huberman with the Huberman Lab.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big proponent of cold exposure and heat exposure, but he goes into the nitty gritties of how it impacts your nervous system and it reduces inflammation. If you've got things like arthritis, it's it it can provide a number of different ailments. And the best way to describe it is cold exposure, like anything, it is a stress to your body. And this is counterintuitive because you are stressing your body in order to become a sort of a stressless being. So you're putting this high stress on your body so that when the real world stress does come, like work stress or relational stress or whatever comes, your body is able to deal with that in the same way that it dealt with the cold. Because everyone knows that stress is actually a physical thing most of the time. It's like when you get stressed and when you get anxious or depressed or whatever, you start breathing shallow, you start rounding your shoulders, you start putting your head down. Your body is literally going into a ball to protect itself. And that's a survival thing. So by putting yourself in a very high stress environment like cold exposure, where every single cell in your body has to muster up the energy it needs to keep you alive, essentially, to keep your heart beating, that exposure releases a whole bunch of hormones that do stuff that's beyond my pay grade. But that's essentially what it is. And I love it because it's it's a method of getting out of your head and into your body. And we speak about this often on the show because there's so many intellectual pursuits out there and there's so many different ideas and books we can read, self-help books. I'm a huge fan of all of that stuff. But there's something so like primal about allowing your body to heal itself through a deliberate stress that you impose on it, like cold exposure or sauna or things like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many benefits, and
Yeah.
I think what I was interested in doing was taking my time with it before jumping on the bandwagon and say, "Ooh, cold exposure is the best thing ever." I've been doing it for a long time now, and I've been drawing these conclusions in my head as to what it's doing to my body and how it's impacting my body. Because if I look at my journey in Europe when I was this time last year, I wouldn't be sitting here with the shirt on. I promise you, I would be freezing right now with the weather outside. It's not very cold, but for me last year it was very cold because my body was not used to that level of cold, so it hadn't adapted. And speaking of that, so what essentially happens with your fat cells is that you've got two types of fat cells. You've got white fat cells and brown fat cells. So white adipose tissue, brown adipose tissue. And this is counterintuitive, but when you expose yourself to cold, you actually gain more brown fats. Gain more brown adipose
So it's
tissue.
trying to protect your body, right? Like it's trying to
Ex-
protect you by putting on more. Okay.
exactly. And the reason why it's brown is it's mitochondrially dense. So it's got tons of mitochondria, which is the energy production of a cell. It's what gives you energy. So by doing that every single day, you are essentially lining your body with this fat that is abundant in energy. And that's why you feel so good. Like when I finished that cold exposure, that cold plunge the first time, which is so much more intense than a cold shower because your whole body's immersed and you can't sort of wiggle yourself out of it.
And
You,
you're anxious because you're not in a shower in your home. You're in a river or like
you're in a river.
a open body of
Exactly.
water.
And you can't just get out. You get out and you've got to walk like 100 meters to get back inside. But once you do it, your body, it feels like you've put like a blanket over you when you get out. You actually become warm quickly because your body is
Mm,
instantaneously reacting. And I'm not saying that's going to be the case for everyone. Like it's actually pretty dangerous to just go and do that without maybe doing cold showers before or just sort of working yourself up to it. I think if I hadn't have done the cold showers, I don't think I would have had the balls to have done the full cold plunge, to be honest with you. It would have been a bit crazy.
God, yeah. I don't even know. I don't even know because I'm such a baby. But so it sounds like inflammation, helping with inflammation, arthritis. I know for my slip disc in my back, I have two discs that rub together since I was like 15 years old. My L5S1, not really an issue on Carnivore. I don't really get pain there anymore, but also my knee. And so
Mm,
like I remember cryotherapy or like, they tell you to ice and do all that stuff, right? So like it's kind of like getting your whole body submerged. So if you
yeah.
can get cryotherapy or if you can do cold showers, like you say, first, and then kind of warm up to like the main dish. But for people there, so inflammation seems to be a big one. It also seems to help with mental toughness and kind of
Mm,
stretching your mind to be like, oh, I can do this, like mind over mind over matter, right? Like my
mm,
mind is strong enough to do this. I kind of have the thing where I have really bad anxiety with closed spaces. And so when I would do the sauna, it was also, I think I told you this, when I was locked in the glass sauna, I was like, oh, okay, like this is also kind of mind over matter, like
yeah.
I'm just like breathing and like kind of like meditating or whatever. But is there any like weight loss? Is there anything that's like not even the science behind it, but super simple things? Like, does it help with acne? Does it help with like, I don't know, just like the function of your organs? Like what else does the cold therapy do? Because you did say a lot of great stuff, but I feel like for like our audience, it might be like just like dumbing it down. Not not saying our audience is dumb. You guys are not dumb, but I'm saying like just like people being like, oh, like I really want to do this, like to improve this. Is it like mental
Mm.
cognition? Like what else?
I would say the biggest thing is, yeah, so we mentioned inflammation, anything to do with arthritis, but improving your sleep, I think that's the biggest
Mm,
thing, is because if your core body temperature is too high, you can't sleep properly. And that's one of the biggest things is I think it impacts your sleep the most. Um, and again, like there's so many confounding things you can research. So if you look at
yeah.
a sauna benefits is gonna have the similar benefits to a cold exposure. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like certain supplements. Like if you have a look at the list, magnesium, sodium, potassium, you go, they all supposedly have the same effect as one another because everything works in conjunction with one another. So
Mm,
just doing cold exposure is one thing, but mixing it with a sauna is a completely different thing on its own. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be. I think this hot cold therapy, so to speak, is what allows your body to adjust to an environment, better than anything else. And somebody like Wim Hof, who's the Iceman, he's got a sauna. So he will go into the sauna, do a cold plunge, get out. But the cold is his, let's just say the cold is where it sort of comes together. That's the
yeah.
thing that
Wait,
affects you the most.
you saying the Iceman has a sauna just
The
cracks
Iceman
me
has a
up.
sauna,
Wait,
believe
but
it
you
or
did,
not.
sorry, there was one thing that you did touch on as well, just so people know, like the stress when you're going into a sauna, the stress that you're putting on your body, that is a temporary stress, but it is like highly provoking and it actually like makes a big impact on your body. That temporary stressors are the ones going off when you're in that super cold or super hot or just doing like a really hard workout. That's good stress. So I just want to like mention that because we're not saying like, hey, you're gonna do something that's just gonna stress you out even more. No,
Mm.
like it's kind of like this temporary stress that then actually helps your body instead of hurting it and creating more like continuous stress, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's the counterintuitive nature of it. It's like kind of you want to ask yourself like, why would I want to put more stress on my body if I'm already stressed? and there's a point to that, you know. Like I know Anthony Gustin has thoughts on this, who we both enjoy his thoughts, but he says it's like anything. You've got to listen to your body. If you feel like you under too much stress at work and everything's a bit too crazy, it's probably not a good idea to be just doing cold showers after cold showers and stressing yourself out more.
Yeah.
It is a stress. It's like it's the same as exercise. It's the same as fasting. And I think this is a really important point, is that everything has its benefit, but it's so easy to overdo it, and the dose sort of makes the poison, and you need to figure out what's going to work for you on what day. So that's a
Yeah.
really good point. And but something like saunas, you know, I was reading earlier, if people that do saunas 5 to 7 times a week, their all-cause mortality decreases by 40%. But that's 5 to 7 times a week. I mean, I don't do it that much, but that's a
That'd be
that's
like
a
me.
that's all cause. That's cancer, that's heart disease, that's everything. So that's a pretty crazy statistic, just knowing that.
We talked a lot about the cold therapy. That's, something that you're doing. I will try to incorporate that as much as I can, but I'm a sauna gal. Like I try to do it almost every day. If I can, like right after a gym workout, I'll go in the sauna because we have one and it's like right there. So I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you, what is like, I guess the biggest thing about the sauna that we've seen, like for benefits, and I guess speaking a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a good question as well, is that um for me, reading and looking at the benefits are literally people that do a sauna 5 to 7 times per week have a 40% decrease in all cause mortality. So what that means is that that's cancer, that's heart disease, that is literally every ailment you could possibly die from as an internal disease. It decreases that by 40%. I don't know many
Wow.
I don't know many like sort of things you can do that would do something at that rate. And I know saunas
Oh,
like started in like Finland or something. It was like the Finnish people would
yeah.
do these saunas, and that's when they noticed. And then it sort of just spread across Europe and then everywhere all over the world, and everyone
Yeah.
started doing them. But that's pretty crazy, right? That's pretty crazy that something could decrease your risk of all cause mortality by that rate. Like nuts, crazy.
I mean, I feel it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm such a big fan. And I actually didn't start doing the sauna until I moved to the Netherlands. Because for me, I've always been in Southern California. The sun is always out. I'm always
Mm.
getting my vitamin D. I'm getting in the heat. But I was never exposing myself to the level of like, hey, this is 30 minutes dedicated to like sweating your balls off, you know? So I
It's a
will
good way
say
of putting
that
it.
if you do live, well, yeah, like if you experience winter, if you live in any place where there's like winter, and you're like, you know what, like a lot of people do get mood or like seasonal depression, right? Because it's related to the seasons changing. It's dark and gloomy now, like I don't have my heat exposure from the normal sun. Like I can't get that, right? So my advice to people is that if you do live in a cold place, there's two things you can do. One, get in the sauna. Try to at least go in the sauna once a week. That's what I did, and it seriously helped. Then the other thing is once every 2 weeks, get in a tanning bed. And I feel like I'm going to get a lot of
Mm.
pushback on that, but it mimics what the sun does, right? And so it kind of gives you like this, like 10 minutes of just being like I am in the sun once more. It almost like tricks your body to
Mm.
thinking that you're going to get sun exposure, right? And it
And do you
uses
know if
that
there's
like,
is there
yeah,
any like studies and things
benefit.
that you know of that actually with the tanning bed side of things? Like I'll just be very interested.
So
Like
Food Lies does it. So Food Lies, they count food
yeah,
dot
Brian
lies.
Sanders.
Yes, Brian Sanders actually does this. So if he's in a place where it's snowing or he can't get exposure to sun for an extended period of time, he will go in a tanning bed, and it does mimic the exact same thing the sun does. It does have those UV rays, which actually convert the cholesterol in your cells to vitamin D. So it does the same freaking thing, right? The thing is that with anything, like you shouldn't go in the sun too long, right? You shouldn't go in a tanning bed too long, right?
Mm,
The purpose of this is to have exposure where it's like, maybe once a day at most, you're getting 30 minutes of direct sun, like on your skin, or, like, I don't know, in the tanning bed, like once every 2 weeks, you're getting like 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes exposure,
mm,
right? So it's not like I'm recommending, hey, go in the tanning bed every day, you know? It's more like this is something that you can do to help fight against seasonal depression and those feelings that you might have when winter creeps in and you're not able
mm,
to get that exposure to the sun because your body still wants it, it yearns for it. So sometimes the sauna takes care of that, but sometimes people need a little bit more, where once every 2 weeks you're going into a tanning bed for 15 minutes to get that sun, right?
mm, mm.
And get that feeling. But the sauna, like what you're saying, that is a huge number. I don't know anything else. I mean, people will be like, Kale does that.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else that reduces the all cause mortality by 40%. Like
No.
the Northern Europeans, they had to like adapt to, like their very cold winters, very dark winters, right? I know, so there's a lot of people who do this. It's very common in Europe, right? Because it gets pretty cold. But I will say that after a workout, like I'm doing this, I will say, like, if you're exposed to toxins, right? Um, the sauna, sweating it out is the best way to get those toxins out, right? So, like, I can't control if I'm exposed to something when I walk in a store. Maybe there's like a fragrance in the store, right? And I'm breathing it in when I'm walking around. It's a really strong candle or something, or
Mm,
freshener, air freshener, which has all these chemicals in it. If I am going into the sauna, I can actually sweat out a lot of the toxins that I'm being exposed to in the environment, right?
yeah.
Which is huge. Like the toxins sweat out in and of itself, biggest reason to probably do that, right? Most gyms in America, they do have saunas attached to them. So if you have a gym membership that's like 30, 40 like dollars a month, they also have a sauna that you can use, right? That's like for your gym membership. But the toxins, I think the biggest thing I was going to say, toxins for me is like
Yeah.
sweating those out, getting that out is just huge and mental.
And and there's something to say. I was recently reading a brilliant book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Don't know how you say his surname, but it's weird. Okay, it's a book about money, but I'm not going to speak about money in this case. But he spoke about how back in the day when you had a fever, your body, your body temperature, your body temperature rises. There's a reason your body temperature does that. These days, when you have a fever, you go to the doctor, he gives you medicine to take your fever away. Did we ever just think to ourselves that, hang on, there's a reason why your body is getting warm and there's a reason why you're getting the night sweats? It's your body literally sweating out the toxins or the thing that's
Or the
maybe
bacteria or the virus.
whatever it is. But the
Yeah.
point is that your your body's core temperature is so it's so sensitive that if it changes by like a degree and it increases by a degree, it shows there's something in your body that's not right, And I wear an Oura ring, and this tells me my body temperature, and it tells me a whole bunch of stuff about my sleep and things like
Ooh,
that.
body temperature. I did not
Yeah,
know that.
but
That's
that's in
interesting.
crazy, and
Yeah.
I would like to think that that's the thing is that when you get into a sauna, I like this episode. It's a deep dive into cold therapy and saunas. When you get into a sauna, you are essentially raising your core body temperature. Your body has to adjust. It has to cool itself down. So therefore, you start to sweat profusely. That sweating takes energy. So all that energy is going to one thing, is to stop you from dying, basically. So it's keeping your body, down. It's literally that's what it is. Like I
It
hate to say
sounds
it,
so
but that,
morbid though.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the process of that, you are getting rid of heavy metals that probably there's probably no other way of getting rid of some of those heavy metals because you can take like
Yeah.
activated charcoal, which might go into your guts and you might get rid of some stuff in your guts or whatever. But nothing will beat the actual intracellular exposure of heat that opens up your cells and your pores and gets rid of all those toxins. I've got an uncle who lives in Durban in South Africa. It's one of the most humid places on earth. It's like literally 90% humidity there. It's crazy. Probably like
Oh
Florida
God.
actually. Probably
Sounds
like
like, I was gonna
Florida.
say, sounds like Florida, but less
And
haters maybe, hopefully. I don't know.
he's a fit guy. He's a fit guy. Drinks like an ox though. Doesn't eat great. I'm convinced it's because he lives in that place and it's like he's in a sauna every single day. You're just sweating that shit out every single day. People there are healthy, you know. I look at most people that live in Durban, South Africa. People are generally fit and healthy there, and they don't do much. And I'm convinced it's because the heat is just sweating everything out of their systems.
Yeah. Wait, that is so true because if you look at places where there might be a correlation, right? So like correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, but you can
Mm,
look at a warm place and be like, okay, people sweat more here, so they get more toxins out. They have more exposure to the sun year round, kind of like San Diego, where I'm from.
mm,
You're out and about. People are out doing things because the weather is so nice 24/7, meaning
yeah.
they're getting more exposure to vitamin D, which is responsible for so many genes, so many functions of your organs, right? And like mental. But I think that's my biggest drawback to living in a place like Boise, where I live now, or Amsterdam, because like I feel like not having that sun year round, like you kind of have to play with it more.
Mm,
You got to biohack more, basically. Like if you live
mm,
somewhere where there is winter, you got to learn how to biohack that winter.
mm.
By the way, you did mention activated charcoal. So I don't know if I ever told you this, but Taylor and I have always been big fans of it. And like the thing is, if I ever find out that there's a sauce that I had at a restaurant, because like if we go out to a steak dinner and they're like, oh, do you want this sauce? Usually there's like something in it, like there's wheat or something in it, like as or flour to like thicken it or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know what they cook with. So I always take activated charcoal after we have a dinner and I'm just like not sure. And then I'll also take it after I drink. And again, like I think it's okay. We're not taking it, do not take activated charcoal every day. Like it can build up and actually give you really like bad problems in like your lower intestine and in like your gut. But my point is that if you're like me, where like you may drink like once a month, or you may expose yourself to gluten once a month, right? Like I think that's okay for those times to take activated charcoal because it kind of grabs that. And then
Mm,
hopefully it grabs whatever is, just lingering about,
mm.
heavy metals, whatever. And it'll like take that out. So I utilize that. But again, like that's like maybe once a month if there is drinking or exposure to gluten in food. It really kind of helps. So yeah, have you ever taken activated charcoal before?
Yeah, I was a big fan of doing that when I was I feel like saying when I was a consistent drinker on the weekends. I would my routine was I would always just chug a big gulp of activated charcoal before I went out, and then like the next day I would have a bit more, and then I was done. And that sort of helped me out. Well, I thought it did at least.
Yeah.
It made me feel better
Well, I
about my
thought,
drinking habits.
oh yeah, yeah. You had like some like deeper stuff going on. For me though, I do see like the difference and I do tell people like there's some people that use it a little bit too much. And like the thing is, so I had a friend, shout out to Jara. I had a friend who she had okay, it was her wedding day, basically, and the morning of, and one of her bridesmaid, her maid of honor, said to her, like, hey, like, you know what? I'm gonna give you this activated charcoal like drink, like health drink or whatever. And she's like, it'll kind of like help you slim down like in your wedding dress, or like it might just make like any like feeling of like bloating go away. So with activated charcoal, as you know, Josh, it takes a while to go through your system, right? Probably
Mhm.
like 24 hours, give or take, depending on your digestive system. So she drank it the morning before. And what happens is there is a period where it kind of like not bloats you, but it kind of does the opposite before it does what it's supposed to and clean out your system.
Mm.
So it actually made her more bloated because she did it the morning of her wedding. And
Oh
she
my
was
word.
like, gosh darn it, like this was supposed to be the opposite. So
Yeah.
if anyone tries to hand you activated charcoal like the morning of your wedding or the morning of a big event or when you have to be in a bikini or whatever, like probably don't do that. Probably do it beforehand. Yeah.
Not a
So
good idea.
that's just lesson.
That
Yeah.
I mean, but that's a really good point, is because um like the cold therapy and the heat therapy and anything really, meat-based diets, things sometimes, almost always, get a little bit worse before they get better. So even meat-based diets, so things generally can get worse before they get better. And I know a lot of people that put on weight when they go on this diet and they start eating a whole bunch of animal protein and fat and they start putting on weight. And then that shouldn't be the reason to deter you from the diet, because one thing, your body's probably healing itself from years of damage. So your body, like we said, it needs a certain amount of fat to actually work properly. Your hormones need fat to thrive and work properly.
Yeah.
So you putting on weight initially, as psychologically hard as that's going to be for you, it's a benefit for you. And you soon reach a point where you find out how much you need, what you're comfortable with, and then soon your body just takes care of itself. Soon you just start
Yeah.
entering this phase where you are just comfortable with what you're eating. You start to look good, you start to perform better. But like cold therapy, saunas, I mean, we know like the initial phases of doing those things is not a pretty sight. It really is shit. Like I
Mm-hmm.
started doing the Wim Hof breathing in the beginning. I really just did not enjoy the feeling. I started getting headaches. I started feeling terrible. But I don't know, something in me just pushed through that initial trough of like despair that you experience, and you sort of reach this like the stage where you're really comfortable with what you're doing.
Yeah, I wanted to mention to you in terms of like the weight loss, right? Because like that was a big thing for both of us doing carnivore, right? Kind of like I felt like stubborn pounds, at least for me, like we're coming off. But also, people have to remember, like you mentioned, like if you're going from a standard American diet, there's going to be a transition period where your body is probably like, whoa, we're oxalate dumping, or
Mm,
hey, like we're getting our hormones aligned, and you know what, there might be a little weight gain here because we're trying to correct things, right? We're trying
mm,
to correct your function of, different organs, hormones, your thyroid, everything, right? So I think there's that period of time. That's why I tell people never just do it for 30 days. You should at least try to do it for 90 days to actually see full benefits, right?
yeah, yeah.
30 days, you might lose maybe like 1 or 2 pounds. You might not lose anything. It might all be about like getting your hormones on track and getting your gut fixed and other stuff, right? But I will say, as a woman, like I initially went down to about 128, right? I started this journey at like 156 pounds, right? I went down, my lowest was like 128. And then I literally just stayed around 130, right? For like most majority of the time. When I moved to Amsterdam, I don't know if it was stress. I don't know if it was, I don't know, maybe being a little bit more loose with how I was eating.
Mm,
But I ended up gaining 10 pounds and I just ended up like never really losing it. And at first I was kind of like, oh, like I'm going to lose this 10 pounds because like I should be 130. That's been like my normal weight. That's how I function. That's how I feel my best. And then the more I kind of was just like, I don't really care, like there was other things that really do take priority over weight loss, right? Like so my
mm,
mental health, my body just like feeling good, building the muscle. I think I had more muscle than like I had in a really long time. And also like I always say this, but I like having tits and an ass.
mm.
I don't know. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. I think I like that. So there's like little things like that where like that would have mortified me. If you would have told me like that I was gonna gain 10 pounds, like on
Mm,
my second year anniversary, I'd be 10 pounds heavier in carnivore, I'd be like, well, that's gonna be an issue that I'm gonna have to correct ASAP. But the more I just thought about it, I was like,
mm,
it doesn't matter because there's so many other things that are good in my life. My body is so nurtured, and like maybe I'm supposed to be 140. Like, I don't know, it kind of seems like that's what it is. Like, I'm not stressed out about anything. I'm just kind of cruising. So, if you do gain weight, just remember that this journey of carnivore and meat-based eating, it's about healing. It's
mm,
not about the weight loss, right? Like, that is one benefit that happens or doesn't happen, but just remember that that's one small thing and there's
mm.
so many, it's like a multifaceted life. Like you have so many different aspects. So if weight gain and, weight loss is like number one,
Mm.
and maybe that's your reason for doing it, cool. But don't forget how far you've come with the other aspects of your life before you just write it off, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I know we've touched on it in the past, but I think the scale itself can be a very, very dangerous place for a lot of people, especially
Yeah.
I know for me it was. I'm not so much attached to my weight now as I once was. I don't know what this. I weigh about like 69 kilograms now. Like just under 5'7". I weigh 69 kilograms. It's pretty heavy for my size because I do a lot of CrossFit and I've got a lot of muscle. But I went down to, what was that, 56 kilograms, which is my lowest. So I went from,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was like my lowest. And I mean, I've mentioned this, so I've been through all aspects of it. I initially lost, like 9 years ago, I went low carb, lost nearly 100 pounds. Then went through my another process, went the other direction, then was getting too skinny. Then I needed to put on weight. So carnivore for me actually helped me put on weight and helped me gain the muscle that I lost, where the carbohydrates wasn't doing anything to me. I was eating all these carbs, I just wasn't putting on any weight. So it benefited me big time in that arena. But the scale for a lot of people can be a very, very dangerous place. It's like I prefer, it sounds a bit vain, but I actually prefer the mirror. It's like actually looking at your muscle definition.
Yeah.
You're seeing your muscles from a physical standpoint because that's going to tell you more about your health than the scale will. The scale really doesn't mean that much. I mean, your body weight can change by 3 to 4. It can literally change by like 5 pounds in, I want to say pounds. I'm acting like I know pounds, but 2, 3 kilograms, which must be what,
Yeah, it's about
five
the same.
pounds? Yeah, five
Yeah, so you're
pounds
right.
in one day. It can change that much in one day
Yeah.
from water retention, whatever.
What you ate. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very slippery slope focusing on the scale itself. I think a better measurement is your mental health, your actual, like, looking at yourself and being like, oh wow, I see my, again, it sounds very vain, but like I could never see my tricep and now I can see my tricep. It's like that's a sign
Yeah.
that your body fat percentage is low, but you might be heavier because you might have more muscle, which is just a simple thing. It's a simple body recomposition, but a lot of people do struggle with that. So that's going to be really, I mean, anybody who's listening, I would love to know if that is something you've struggled with, because I know a lot of people do ask about that. They put on weight and that throws them off straight away. It's like, nope, I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
totally. I
Mm.
will say too, like, weighing yourself just regularly is not great. I mean, like, if you need to check in every once in a while, like, I will check in. I think I've weighed myself once every 2 months, which is a pretty significant amount of time, just because I'm like, oh, I just want to check out like what's going on. And I'm more just curious, like, oh, is this more? Is it less?
Yeah.
Whatever. But I
Yeah.
think that's a great thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at your body and you're looking at like how you actually look and how you feel. So it doesn't matter what the scale says. Like, if you feel good, fuck yeah. Like, what you're doing is working. Like, you're doing a great job, right? So how you feel comes way before, like, the number. This is kind of maybe controversial, but I like to bring up the BMI, the body mass index, right? So that's basically like your height, and then it takes your weight, right? So like, I'm just under 5'6", and then I'm like 140 pounds, right? So my BMI is around like 22.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't think, but like literally, like, I'd still have a healthy BMI, even if I was 152 pounds, it says.
Mm.
So it's a pretty big like scale, right? Unless I'm like bulking and I'm like a crazy bodybuilder that's like bulking muscle to the point where it's like I'm unrecognizable. Yeah, maybe I could be like 152 and be like all muscle and be 5'6". And like that would be like the top of it. But all I'm saying is that I personally think that it's still a number that we should look at every once in a while, because like it gives such a wide range anyway. that like for like a healthy BMI, right? It's not saying like, oh, you have to be one of these three, like there's a very small range that you have to be in order to be healthy. It's like, no, like you can be under your BMI, you can be healthy, and then it goes like overweight, and then it goes obese. So people don't like looking at these things because I think too, like you don't like to look at like the reality of some things. And sometimes, yeah, maybe if you're 5'6" and you can build on muscle to the point of being 152, that'd be, I'm telling you right now, like that would be really difficult for me to do.
Mm,
Like for me to get to 152 and have it be all muscle is
mm.
like pretty intense. Cause like I've weighed 156 and let me tell you, that was not all muscle and that was not good. I was not healthy. So I do think there's some like truth to that scale. But again, like it just depends like how you feel, right? If like obviously if you're super obese or super overweight and you probably have like health issues or you have like, different issues that are there, you're probably not going to be like, oh, but I feel great mentally, so I'm going to continue this weight, right? There's usually something that's pushing you to like lose that weight so you can feel better on the other side.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
I definitely, I think it really just depends on yourself as a person, and how you, there's so many things you're gonna have to navigate on a journey, on a healing journey. You're gonna have to navigate so many different parts of yourself that maybe you didn't expect would come up. And if that's something that keeps you on track and keeps you going, then it's a good measurement to have. It's like everyone starts in different places, and they come to it from different ways. I can say, from a person who's been on a weight loss journey for like, what, 9 years now, which is actually a
Yeah.
pretty long time. I can honestly say that over time, you accept that you sort of, you will always, to a certain extent, have that sort of little bit of a body dysmorphia that you experience, but that's okay. It's just past, it's just conditioning. It's just because you don't feel like you are enough in the body that you're given. But the more times you approach it and look at it and be like, okay, it's just, yeah, it's just conditioning, the kinder you get to yourself, and the more you feel at peace with what you're going. Because I think numbers can be like so binary, and you can achieve a weight loss goal that you want, like X number of pounds. To me, that's not going to bring you happiness. It never will. It,
No,
it might give you
no.
pleasure in the moment, but long-term happiness, there's no ways. There's no ways a number will ever bring you that happiness. Happiness comes from so many different areas, and a lot of it comes from just the acceptance. And the paradox is that when you let go and you accept, sort of your the sort of body dysmorphic image you have of yourself, you begin to do things in a fashion that actually allows you to grow more and lose weight naturally, just in a fun way. You're not forcing it. It just happens because you're just on this journey. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, or you heal other things and then you
Yeah.
realize that the sugar or carb addiction that you have is actually related to when you feel stressed or when you feel
Mm.
sad.
Mm.
Like I think I've told you this, like I talk to myself out loud. I am like a huge sweet tooth person, huge overeater. So if I do ever have a craving, I actually have a conversation with myself out loud. And I
Mm.
go, you know what, Nicole? Why are you craving this? Like what happened today? And I can kind of retrace that, but I always do it out loud. And I think Taylor does think I'm crazy, but I mean, I know I am, so it's fine.
We're all crazy, don't
But
worry.
yeah, but I did want to shift gears a little bit. I wanted to talk to, maybe you don't know this, Josh, but I went through a weed gummy phase
Mm.
and I wanted to
This
talk
is
about
shifting
this.
gears. Cold exposure to
No, no.
weed gummies.
Cold to sauna to weight to weed gummies. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this because I remember being like in so much. So when I started my carnivore journey, right? This is like literally like month two, like officially of not being just keto, of just doing like the meat, month two of COVID. So April 1st, 2020, right? Anxiety is like at an all-time high. my issues are kind of at an all-time high. I was really heavy. I was eating sugar. I was eating everything. It was just not good. Right. So one of the things that I found that I thought was helping me was every night around like 6 p.m., I
Mm-hmm.
would take one or two little tiny weed gummies, right? So this is probably equivalent to like, I think 2.5 milligrams of weed. Like I have a very, or sorry, THC. I have a
Is it
very,
Are they
very,
CBD gummies or weed gummies? What would you
no, no,
describe
no.
them
These
as?
are weed. This is THC.
Oh, it's
So there's
THC.
THC
Okay.
in it. So
Okay.
all like weed, obviously still has CBD in it. Like those are still, they're still part of it, right? But the thing
Yes.
that makes you high is the THC, right?
Mm.
And that does other things besides make you high. So I was taking about 2.5 milligrams of THC in the form of these little weed gummy cubes. And I did this in the beginning of my journey. And I don't really know why, because like obviously when you do THC, it gives you like the munchies, like when you
Yes.
do weed,
Yes.
which is really weird. But like I was able to fight that, which is even weirder. But for me, like I had so much anxiety that it kind of just checked me out. Like every night at 6 p.m., I was checked out, which
Mm.
if you now looking at this, and I'll tell you what ended up happening, but looking at this, that means like not down to have sex, totally checked out from having a conversation. And I have a straight edge husband. Like I have a husband who's never done drugs. So I'm
Mm.
literally just like high. And it literally helped me to cope with everything that was happening. Cause like it felt like World War III or like the end of the world was happening when early COVID.
Mm.
So I would take it every night at 6. And it was only a small amount, 2.5 milligrams, because I am just like a baby. And yeah, I would just get like really high. I would after dinner, I think, and then I would just like end up like going to bed. And it just helped me so I didn't have to think about things that were happening in the world, right? So I did this for about like 2 months in the beginning, and like everything was fine. And then one night, um, I ended up taking one. And here's the thing about gummies that I didn't know. They can't actually, when you make gummies, it's like on a baking sheet and then you cut it. And so
Mm.
what happens is sometimes the THC pools into one side or the other of these gummies, right? So because it's a liquid that they're turning into a solid, they can't actually control how much THC goes into one of these, especially if it's on a tilt or something. So I got a bad batch and I thought I was going to die. Like I literally thought I was going to die. I was like, I felt like I was in a coffin when I was like laying down, and I was just like,
Shame.
oh, like it was no. It was like the worst thing ever. And so since that happened, I just didn't touch them. And what happened was I ended up getting to a point of desperation from like anxiety. And like later down the road, I don't remember what happened. And I did one, and then the same thing happened. And I was like, okay, guess time's
Yeah.
up. And I actually, so what I did later, like I think like a year later, I asked Taylor and I was like, hey, do you remember like that phase I went through? And he goes, yeah, you were like high every night for like 2 months straight. And I was like, yeah, like that was so dumb. Like I was like trying not to deal with anything. And I was just like getting high at night. And like,
Mm.
even though maybe it helped me sleep or maybe helped my muscles because I was like using them a lot, um,
Mm.
like with recovery, because I know like Joe Rogan, for example, does that.
Mm.
Um, I just like wasn't there. Like I was like checked out. Like
Yeah.
that sucks. And he just was like, yeah, I just kind of like let you do what you needed to do at the time because I think it was everything was stressing you out. But he's like, yeah, I didn't like that. I'm like, oh,
Good man.
okay. But anyways, yeah, like moral of the story is like if you have to rely on a substance to get you through on like a daily basis, like there's probably something else that you need to deal with. So then I ended up going to therapy
Mm.
to like discuss like the anxiety and everything. And these were like telecommunication, like, Zoom therapy sessions. So it was still like okay. And then I would do
Mm.
phone sessions, but I needed to know like why I felt like I needed to grab a weed gummy to like escape every night, and like
Mm.
actually deal with my anxiety. And I will say, like, once Carnivore kind of got in like 90 days or so, like I noticed a huge improvement with especially the anxiety on a daily basis. And then the social anxiety that also followed COVID, because you
Yeah.
have to remember, like, so many people got fucked up. Like
Yeah.
they were alone. Like you maybe were one of them. Like you're alone in your apartment
Mm.
and like you can't do anything. And like it fucks up your mind. You then have the opportunity to then go out and do something. And you're like, why am I anxious going to do this thing that I've had no problem doing in the past? But right now I'm literally about to have an anxiety attack
Mm.
going to my friend's house for dinner party. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this social anxiety phenomenon happened following COVID. And I think it messed up a lot of people. I think it made people a lot more dependent on alcohol and substances, to cope with it, because it's very difficult to get to the root and figure that out unless you have like a therapist you're working with or something like that. But do you have any thoughts on people post COVID and anxiety like that?
Well, I actually read something. I wanted to bring it up actually, because now that you said that, I was going to respond a different way. But here we go. In 2020, alcohol-related deaths increased by nearly 40% in Americans aged 25
Yeah.
to 44. In 2020, for Americans under 65, there were more deaths from alcohol than COVID. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's scary. One, that's scary. Like the fact that that's even a thing. And then just to respond to you from a person who is very passionate about the healing effects of psychedelics and things like that. Marijuana is very similar to a psychedelic, and your experience of nearly dying, whatever, is so common. What I want to say is that, and
Oh God.
your longing to grab for it to escape, that is so normal. Is that people need to know. I feel like if more people knew that they were not alone in it, and that it's not only them trying to escape, that things would be a bit, it's always good chatting to somebody who's been through a similar experience. I know so many friends that have just overdone the weed, and they've literally felt like they're going to die. And it's sure
Yeah.
it's the plant's medicine speaking to you, and telling you something about the state of the world, the state of your mind. I think if I had to look at it, I think the world was so fucked up then that death was on everyone's mind. So, it's not uncommon for that to occur in your subconscious, to think
Yeah.
that you're dying now, and that's exactly it. I I do occasionally, like every second, third night, I've got some CBD that I take occasionally, which I find helps. But it's got like what
Yeah.
0.01% THC. Um,
Yeah. So you're not getting high, basically. Like
I'm
you're
not
you're
getting high.
getting the physical, like,
Yeah,
therapeutic properties of it.
yeah. And I mean, on that note, that's the thing, is that it's what, like, I really want to touch on this in the next episode as well. But like metabolic flexibility, you seriously just want to get to a point where you can try these different things and not let them totally get you off track. But like you said, it's the minute you stuck with carnivore or meat based for 90 days, you felt the benefits. You felt them, and sticking through that made all the difference. It wasn't the gummies that made the difference. It was actually sticking through that. And if everyone can reach a point where they start figuring out when they need something, when they don't, when do I need a bit of magnesium, when do I know not, when do I need a bit of CBD, when do I, just knowing when to add something, when not to do it, when not to overdo it. So everyone just makes it their own. So yeah, I think that's a really valid point.
Yeah. I will say too, like, I don't know, I get really weirded out about, because I know people around me that, like, I don't think I've ever seen them sober, or like I don't think I've ever been around them when they're sober. And like I always think to myself, like, I can't help but having those thoughts, like, oh, like if COVID didn't happen, right? Like if these lockdowns didn't happen, like would they be like that? Or you know what I mean? Like, is this coping? But it's also like, as you know, like it's such a sensitive thing to bring
Mm,
up someone's drinking. Like nobody wants to approach someone and be like, "Hey Josh, like I noticed that like whenever we go to do something together, drinking always has to be involved.
mm,
Like I haven't seen you sober in like the last 5 times at least that we've hung out. Like is everything okay?" it's such a sensitive topic that unless it's coming from your partner, unless it's coming from your mom, unless it's coming from like your sibling, nobody likes to be called out on their shit. Do you know what I mean? And it's not
Mm.
even for that. It's like people just get defensive of their behaviors, period. Right?
Yeah.
Like people don't want, it's like embarrassing. Like it's just not something fun that you want to like confront someone about. So like
Mm.
you could be like, you know, someone that's drunk all the time, but no one said anything to you. So no one, you know, like you haven't had that moment where you're like, hey, like this is becoming a problem, or like you haven't had an issue where like you had some huge blow up fight or made a fool of yourself. So someone can bring up that example. So I think there are a lot of people like that now, like post COVID, where like unfortunately, like I think people are probably gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I think people are pussies when it comes to holding other people accountable. Like if my friend does something fucked up, I'm
Mm.
gonna call them out and be like, hey dude, like what you did was not cool. Like I don't appreciate that, or like whatever. Like we live in a world where everyone's tiptoeing because they want to be well liked. They want everyone to like them. They don't want to be any area of conflict, you know? Like I just think it's like super frustrating from my point of view because like I want to be called out on my shit. I do. Like I want to be given feedback if I do something fucked up or whatever. Like I want someone to call me out. Like if you're a true friend, you should be able to call me out on my bullshit, right? And I
Yeah.
should be able to call you out on your bullshit. So I think people are now so fucking sensitive, and like it's just like to the point where like you can't even like have an honest conversation because you don't know if what you're going to say or the feedback you're going to give a friend is going to like ruin your friendship or ostracize you. And like that's happened
Mm.
to me before. I called someone out for something and I thought they did was fucked up, and it kind of ostracized me a little bit. And even though what they did was extremely fucked up, I think that some of my other relationships took a toll, and that's okay because I don't really want to surround people that have a low moral standard or are okay with people doing fucked up shit to each other, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, then, that's what I love about the way we're living our lives right now is because I truly believe that going meat based, going simple, living life the way I do, it has sort of been this natural filter as to who's going to be in my life and who's not. I don't
Yeah.
even have to call people out for their bullshit. Their bullshit is just being called
Yeah.
out by them doing what they're doing. I couldn't care less actually about
Yeah.
some of the things that the people are doing, and I got no problem with that. It's just that I don't want to be a part of that anymore. It's like really, I'm just so not interested in some of the stuff that people do. And like we said, I still go out to the odd festival here and there. I still go enjoy myself, but for the most
Same.
part, I'm passionate about building this, building my brand, building a community of like-minded people that are just interested in healing each other. And the friends that want to stay will stay, the friends that don't won't, and that's all okay. I've started just getting so
Yeah.
comfortable with the fact that not everyone's going to be wanting to have the same path as you. And the weird thing is that I've noticed over time, certain friends start catching up, and they sort of be like, oh, this person's onto something. Like they're onto something. Nothing trumps consistency. If you are consistent and you keep going forth and putting the message out and doing your thing, and you start showing your results, like you know walking into CrossFit now and being able to clean and jerk weights that I could never do, and feeling so fit is the proof of the consistency that I've been on. And that's the biggest benefit for me, is just going through that journey and allowing the
Yeah.
results to speak for themselves, so to speak.
I will say too, like, remember though, like, not everyone is at the point where you are, Josh. Like, or you or I are, where like we kind of don't deal with bullshit anymore. Like, we're in a place where
Mm.
we are very selective with who we surround ourselves with. But you have to remember there's some people who are living, let's say, for example, they're living in their hometown. They have friends that they've been friends with since they were very, very little. And those friends are going through shit. Those friends are coming to the point where this person's trying to get better and they
Yeah.
still have this toxic person in their life, which is causing drama, which is drinking too much, which is kind of, you know what I mean? And so I think I'm talking about more of those people who are
Yeah.
kind of at like a crux or like a crossroads
Yeah.
where they're trying to better themselves, or maybe trying to get away from drinking and doing and living a life that maybe they don't agree with, or, you know, want
Mm.
to partake in because their priorities have shifted. And so
Mm.
it's like almost like, how do you have these difficult conversations, or do you just slowly like push this person away or stop hanging out slowly and slowly?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I completely agree with you. But what I was going to say is that no investment that you ever undertake is not going to take some sort of sacrifice. There will undoubtedly be a
Mm-hmm.
huge sacrifice. It is not easy. I didn't get to this point because I decided I've known, the past 2 years, especially moving to Amsterdam, I've experienced the deepest form of loneliness that I've ever experienced in my life. But because of that, I know how much I value, the company of people that actually support my mission and what I'm about now. So that's
Mm-hmm.
shown me these things, but it's definitely not going to come easy. I agree with you. It's like people are probably gonna have to go through moments of real decision making where you're gonna have to be like, if I want to be the person I want to be, I'm gonna have to get rid of this person in my life. I have to, it's like things like that, or tell them
Yeah.
about their attitude towards drinking, smoking, whatever. Because if I don't, I'm living with the burden of not telling them, and that's going to affect me. So I always like to think of it like that. If you are faced with a situation, you need to think about first and foremost, how is it affecting you? Are you holding on to it? Is it because if it is, then you definitely need to confront it. It is no doubt
Yeah,
about it.
totally.
You know what I'm saying? You have to. But if somebody's doing something and it's just your past conditioning that's being affected and it's just a trigger for you, I don't think it warrants your attention. I think it's a chance for you to work on yourself instead of calling somebody else on their bullshit. But if it's directly affecting you and it's being toxic to you
Yes.
directly, then
Mm-hmm.
100% it's like, I don't want you in my life. But I think that 95% of what is going on out there is just happening. It's just a lot of it we take inside and we just want to make it
Yeah.
our own sort of,
That's a
condition.
good point. That's a really good point, I guess, to clarify too. Like, unless it's like affecting you, right? If there's like a toxic relationship you have with someone, just like it could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a sibling, it could be like anything. Like, you don't have, if it's not affecting you, you don't have to deal with it, right? That's kind of like ignoring the BS, right? Because no one has time for that. So I get what you're saying. And what you're saying is that if it is a toxic relationship or something that is hurting you, hindering your growth, like really taking your time and like having a direct effect on you, then you need to deal with it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So that's a huge, just like differentiator. But
And I've got
yeah,
sorry, and
anyway, yeah.
just to add on to that, I've got a
Yeah.
strategy for if somebody is triggering you and it's actually them doing their thing and it's actually it's a trigger to you, tell them about your trigger. That often exposes things. So if somebody's doing something and it's just them doing it and they drinking and it's not really, it has nothing to do with you, but you feel bothered by it, say to them, be like, I just want to let you know that I know you're doing this and I know it's your life and I just want to let you know it's triggering me. I don't know why, but by just opening the conversation, like you said, opening the
Yeah.
door to a sober conversation with somebody, how rare is it that we have sober conversations like that?
Yeah. I was going to say, make sure
So
it's sober, not
it's
when
so
like the person's
rare.
drunk.
Yeah, it's so rare in this world, but it's so beautiful. It's
Yeah.
that you need to just say, like, listen, it's triggering me. I know it's not your fault, but it's triggering me, and I just thought I'd let you know. And then they might turn around and say something, and then it's going to open up a whole conversation that's going to
Yeah.
lead somewhere good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just people, my whole thing is like, don't feel like you can't be honest with a friend because you're doing a disservice by
Mm,
being dishonest with them. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it kind of goes down to like, is it worse if I do this because I'm going to be ostracized, or like I'm
Mm,
saying something that's unpopular, or, like they're not going to want to be friends with me? Or do I like tell them the truth? Because this ultimately could lead to them not dying from fatty liver disease, or this could ultimately lead to them like turning things around, or at least knowing that like it's a issue for me, or you know what I
Mm.
mean? Like it's an issue. Like anyway, but I feel like this is such a big like thing, and
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? Like there's so many layers to
Yeah.
it, but for the most part, I just stay in my lane. And unless something directly affects me, then I try to like modify things or kind of limit my exposure to certain people, because I'm like, you know what?
Mm.
Seen this person a million times. I don't really need
Yeah.
this shit.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't want to be caught up in this. But that's also just like going through growing up and having priorities change, because
Yeah.
it really does change. Like you go from being single to being in a relationship to being married to having kids. Like when you do all that, like, of course, you can just imagine like the different priorities continuously changing. And that's the easiest
Yeah.
thing, is like your relationship status is like the easiest thing to show priorities stay like changes, but also like, your growth, right? Like your growth, Josh, for example, is different. Like, you're single, but just saying like this is wrong, but you're single, but like your mental growth has been so tremendous. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, there's some people, like, I know people who literally like are single and like they can't be alone, and like they're very
Mm.
depressed, and like they're on antidepressants. Like, there's just a lot of things where, like, I don't know, people deal with that. Did I ever tell you about how I went on antidepressants and then I wanted to kill myself? That was fun.
Yes, I think we did
Yeah.
mention
Yeah. No,
it.
we did mention that. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is cool. Literally, bad day. It's about
We
to start
must
my
we
period.
must find we must
Yeah.
find the episode and we'll link it below.
I know. But yeah, just to say, like, yeah, just if you feel like intervening with something, do it. But if not, like, and you can just let that noise pass you by. I always
Mm.
say, let that noise pass you by.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
100%. Cool. This was
Anything
a fun
else?
episode. I was just looking through my notes now. We've gone through cold exposure, saunas, activated charcoal. Things get worse before they get better. Weight loss, weed gummies, toxic relationships. I don't know what else you want to add to that list, but it's a pretty eclectic mixture of
Yeah.
topics, right there.
It always is. It always is.
Yeah.
But we'll have to talk about maybe um I don't know. Like, well, maybe we'll just have a whole episode with like drinking or like being
Mm.
social on Carnivore. Cause I
Yeah.
think that's kind of interesting, because I feel like people are like, oh, your life's over. Like you can't enjoy life. And it's like, no, man, like I enjoy the best forms of life. By the way, it's
100%.
snowing outside. Like, so it was like
Man.
65 degrees last week and now it's snowing. So I'm just like, what is happening here? But
What?
anyways, this was a great, I know.
This was a great episode.
Yeah, no, but great episode. I had so much fun,
Yeah.
speaking with you, learning more about cold therapy and stuff too. But yeah, everyone like, subscribe, share this out,
Comment.
give us feedback. Yeah, comment, let us know how shitty we are or whatever. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. Only good comments.
Yeah. Cool. This was fun.
Okay.
Peace.
All right. Bye.